And in addition to some in the international community, several members of the president's own party are upset with the actions America has taken in Libya. Ohio Congressman Dennis Kucinich expressed his frustration, even going so far as to suggest the president's decision could be, quote, an impeachable offense.
This is wrong. It is fundamentally wrong, and I totally disagree with what President Obama is doing. This is a very grave matter, and it's without constitutional authority. The president doesn't have any constitutional right to attack Libya without the permission of Congress. And the fact that he's done so without going to Congress is a very serious matter.
Now, Colorado Congresswoman Diana DeGette is also upset with the president saying, quote, launching military action against another nation requires Congress to be fully informed so we can exercise our constitutional authority. I therefore call on Speaker Boehner to call an emergency session returning members to Washington so the president may address a joint session of Congress and be given the opportunity to make the case for war. And joining me now with reaction is the author of the brand new book, a bestseller, Revolt, former Clinton advisor Dick Morris. For so many reasons, this gets frightening. The president can't make a decision. You got conflicting messages within the administration between Hillary, the defense secretary. They can't even define what the actual mission is. And now he's got the left wing of his own party furious, which tells me the president's going to try and bail out as soon as he can. Of course, France and Great Britain leading the way anyway. Your thoughts?
Well, I have a column on this on my website that I just wrote. The Powell Doctrine is the one that we should follow in this situation, which says, first, we need to avoid mission creep. Second, we need to have a clear objective. And thirdly, before you go in, you need an exit strategy. He's failed on all three counts. First of all, we've already had mission creep. This was sold to us as a no-fly zone to stop Gaddafi's air force from attacking the rebels and killing civilians. Now it's gone way beyond that. We're bombing his entire armor and strafing his armed forces. Has nothing to do with no-fly. Secondly, they said that our goal was to protect civilians. Now, how are you going to do that from the air with cruise missiles? I don't know. But how are we going to protect civilians if Gaddafi remains in power? And is our goal, therefore, to topple Gaddafi? And then you get to the main problem, which is exit strategy. Let's say Gaddafi doesn't go. Do we continue airstrikes? Do we send in ground troops? Let's say he goes and then mounts an Iraqi-style insurgency. Do we intervene on the ground? Our same goal is to protect civilians. So Obama has really bitten off on an ill-considered, impulsive way much more than he can chew.
Well, I think,
and, of course, let's also remember that Dick, Bush did go to Congress to get permission.
But, Dick, I think he was dragged into this kicking and screaming. That's what's fascinating to me, is that I don't think he has his own mind. I don't think he really made the decision himself. And, you know, some very basic questions. You know, what is the standard now? Do we go into Bahrain? Do we go to Saudi Arabia? Do we go to Yemen? You know, where are we going to go? Are we going to go after Mugabe? Are we going to go to Sudan?
Yeah.
Well, you know, if that's the definition, go ahead.
We essentially have two coalitions that are running our foreign policy. One is the coalition with NATO and the United Nations, where essentially it's like the Suez Crisis, Britain and France leading the United States that's the reluctant dragon following behind. And the second coalition is the president and his Secretary of State. Now, Hillary's role in this is not as the chief foreign policy official. Her role is as the alternate leader of the Democratic Party. And he needs her on board not because she's the head of his cabinet, but because she was the runner-up in the presidential election. And he feels if he can get both wings of his party behind him, the Kucinich sniping that he's getting from the left won't bother him. And in the short term, a couple of days, he's right.
Yeah.
But if this mission goes afoul, or we stay in it for a long time, or we abandon it in just a totally cowardly, craven way, either of those outcomes is going to be very bad for Barack Obama.
But do you remember, Dick, I mean, he dithered on the Afghanistan troop issue, and then he didn't give the generals what they were asking for. Similarly, he couldn't come out in defense of those students that were fighting for freedom in 2009 in Iran. Similarly, we saw this in Egypt. Same thing. It's sort of like he does. We don't know what his foreign policy is. We don't know what his objective here is. We don't know what his success is. We don't know what an exit strategy is. And and I suspect that the liberals now that are opposing him are going to have a profound impact on his future decision-making on this. Do you agree with that? Do you think this will impact him?
Oh, I think they are. This could be the thing that catalyzes a primary against him. But I think that there's something more important, and you're just getting at it, Sean. Foreign policy is how we learn about the character and the personality of our presidents. There are too many factors in economic and other domestic policy, but foreign policy is in his control. And Obama looks weak, he looks confused, he looks conflicted, he looks torn, and he doesn't look like a president. And I think the long-term effect of this will not only be the possibility of a war that saps his popularity and divides his party, but also the indelible impression of weakness it'll leave with the American people.
And Dick, it does, with the world, with our own economy suffering, with food prices the highest they've been since 1974, gas prices now, we saw the price of a barrel of oil today over $100. You know, he's playing golf, spent the weekend in Rio, he's on ESPN picking his brackets, he's doing fundraisers. You know, where is this guy? Sure. He doesn't seem engaged.
Let's call it by its right name. We are entering a double-dip recession right now. The Gallup poll polls the unemployment rate. And if they can call a presidential race within half a point, they know what unemployment is without the government doctored figures. They said it's risen from 8.8 in the middle of December to 10.3 now. And Rasmussen says consumer confidence has dropped from 88 to 73 in 90 days. We are entering a double-dip recession, and he's on vacation in Rio.
In Rio, or playing golf, or picking
Actually,
brackets.
maybe it's better that he's on vacation. Can't mess anything up there.
Well, when you're allowing France to make decisions for you, we got a problem. Dick Morris, good to see you. Congratulations on the best-selling book. And coming up, President Obama is losing some of his friends on the left over Libya. Now, former Democratic Congressman Joe Sestak is here. He'll explain what is behind the liberal fallout. And even Louis Farrakhan is unhappy with the president's approach. The Nation of Islam leader unleashes on the anointed one.
You can't order him to step down and get out. Who the hell do you think you are?
And welcome back to Hannity. Now, we just spoke with Dick Morris about the criticism that President Obama is receiving, courtesy of his friends on the left over Libya. And for more on this Democratic backlash, I am joined by former Democratic Congressman from Pennsylvania, Joe Sestak. Congressman, good to see you. Welcome back to the program.
It's good to be back, Sean.
Before we get to the criticism, can you tell America, I mean, you have friends in Congress, you've been there yourself, who is heading up Operation Odyssey Dawn? Who's in charge of this?
Without a question right now, it is the United States. And if I could, my viewpoints that I'm going to give you here were shaped from 31 years in the United States Navy, doing a no-fly zone over Iraq and strikes against Afghanistan, and also serving at the National Security Council by Clinton. They're not shaped by certainly any liberalism. It's by a pragmatic approach that weighs the cost versus the benefits, and that's my concern.
Well, but
if the United
wait a minute.
States,
you are probably one of the few that actually believe America's heading this effort up, because the president himself said that we are playing a supportive role. The administration said they're playing a supportive role, and all on the Sunday shows they're playing a supportive role. So we are not heading this up. Nicolas Sarkozy, Great Britain, France, and England, they seem to be heading this up. Does that concern you that the president has given conflicting messages vis-a-vis his Secretary of State, his own words, and with his defense secretary? We're not heading this up.
Without any question, when about 135 of the 140 Tomahawk missiles that are fired by the United States, all the refueling, and all the command and control is by us. We are the muscle in this operation. But I agree with this. Whenever men and women of the United States are placed into harm's way, I want the United States to have leadership. I do not believe that we should back away from this. I feel earlier on in this crisis, we should have made a strong determination, will we or won't we, rather than being apparently dragged into this by the Arab League, France, and England. Now, this said...
But wait a minute. Admiral Mullen said that our role is going to be short-term, and then he's leaving it. And so we don't really know what the mission is. Let me ask you this. Well, one Democratic Congress, we have one calling for impeachment. We have others saying that he should have gone to Congress. Here's what one Democratic congressman said. They consulted the Arab League, the United Nations. They didn't consult the United States Congress. George Bush got the authorization for the use of force in Iraq and formed a coalition. Did the president make a mistake by not doing that?
I think any calls for impeachment are absolutely ridiculous. And yes, I do think the president should have better consulted. But look, since World War II, you know as well as I do, from Korea on, presidents have had to take sudden action like this has been. Now, all that said, Admiral Mullen also said something that was very insightful over the weekend when he stated that circumstances will drive where this goes in the future. That concerns me because our military force that we are to use must be very carefully matched with a political objective. What is it? If it's humanitarian assistance, that's one thing.
All right.
But if it is to remove Gaddafi eventually by some means, how do we ever extradite ourselves from Libya?
Hillary Clinton
That's my
said
concern.
that was an objective, but the president did not say that in Rio this weekend. Look, I agree with you about the War Powers Act. I agree there are issues that probably should be resolved. But are you concerned about the president's vacillation, the inconsistent message from top cabinet members? Are you concerned about mission creep that has already started?
With due respect to the commander-in-chief and the administration, no, I am concerned that early on we did not somehow on our own seem to speak up, not only in the international community, but to a public that has been through two long wars for a decade to say, here's where we're going and here is what the end game is. Look, you and I both remember Bosnia. Yep. Where after 78 days of airstrikes, having said that no ground troops would ever be in there, there were ground troops.
Right, but
look, so my thing is you cannot say or ever take off the table ground intervention. I don't think we should.
I agree with you.
I think that this step that we've done here is not the wise one. But
we better have an objective. The president said in Rio, you know, we're going to make the world safe from tyrants. Are we going to Sudan? Are we going after Mugabe? Are we going to go in Bahrain, Yemen? Are we going to insert ourselves in Syria, Lebanon? Are we going to insert ourselves in Saudi Arabia? I mean, what is our, how do we define success here? What is our mission here? And what is the new Obama standard here?
Points are taken. Look, I'm a believer that the Clinton administration should have intervened, for example, in Rwanda. And the first George Bush was correct in Somalia when we first went in. But then you remember, we changed the political objective, but didn't build up our forces to match it. And that is my concern here. We put up with a continent that has had Amin, al-Bashir, Robert Taylor, Robert Mugabe. My point is that you have to weigh the cost versus the benefits. And if we do go into this thing, you cannot just say that we're in and then we're out. Not when men and women of the United States are involved. Right. Would we have done this for Egypt, for example, just a month and a half ago? I care about humanitarian concerns. It is one of our interests. But I don't think this matched up to it at this particular moment.
I got to tell you, if we're not in this to win it, and by definition, I would say winning has to be the removal of Gaddafi. And, you know, I also have a fear, we'll get into this in the next segment, are we supporting, are these rebels in any ways connected to al-Qaeda? I mean, it's a big question, and there's evidence they may be.
This is the political endgame that is so uncertain that gives me the pause that I brought out.
Yeah, I think you raised some fair objectives. We wish our military men and women the best, as always, but thank you for being with us.
As always. Thank you.
And
let's
coming
hope
up
it
next,
goes well.
Japan's nuclear crisis takes a significant turn for the worse. Breaking news has just crossed the wires. That is coming up next. We have a live report from our own Greg Palcott. That's straight ahead. And Louis Farrakhan speaks out against Obama in harsh terms. That and much more straight ahead.